3 years ago, on Jeju Island, the Navy was helplessly observing the battle between the hunters and the ant-looking magic beasts. Although the hunters had all kinds of abilities, the magic beasts easily slaughtered them, so the remaining survivors thought their rank was too low to stand a chance. However, another hunter named Jin-Woo arrived to fend off the magic beasts, and he healed the survivors' critical injuries in an instant. The magic beasts immediately tried to swarm Jin-Woo, but 2 more hunters arrived to protect him, and they dealt with the magic beasts with ease. The survivors recognized that they were the S ranks, and they sounded excited by their arrival. But the leader of the swarm of magic beasts also arrived. Although the magic beasts looked much stronger than the previous ones, the 2 S ranks worked together and killed it with ease. However, similar magic beasts started to swarm their location, so the 2 had to use their real power and abilities. At the same time, in another location, Guildmaster Choi noticed the arrival of Jin-Woo's group because of the explosion caused by their abilities. However, they were also occupied in their own battle as the ants started to swarm their location. Guildmaster Choi used his powerful fire magic to attack the ants, but the larger ants just walked past it, so the melee battle commenced. Over 10 years ago, a gate linking the world with another dimension that was filled with creatures called magic beasts appeared. These creatures were immune to normal weapons, but many individuals had awakened the abilities necessary to fight them. They were called hunters, and their ranks were classified based on their magical power, with rank E being the weakest and rank S being the strongest. However, after awakening these powers, it was impossible to gain greater strength, even with abundant effort. 3 years later, the present day, a boy named Jin-Woo, who was nicknamed the weakest hunter of all mankind, arrived outside the gate to join a raid. He was so weak that an E-rank gate landed him in the hospital. However, everyone was glad to see him, as it signifies that if he is called to take part in a raid, it will be an easygoing one. Jin-Woo knew all of these stories about him, but he didn't try to argue, as all of them were the truth. At the same time, a girl named Juhi worriedly asked what happened after seeing his injuries. He explained that it was the same as usual, but she still lectured him while showing her concern, and she was even upset that a healer was not present during the raid to heal his injuries. However, Jin-Woo blamed himself for being weak instead. Afterwards, they joined their team and met their leader, Song Cheol. Everyone acknowledged his skills, so the team decided to enter the gate feeling relieved that they had a capable leader. One of his teammates patted his shoulder. He encouraged Jin-Woo to hang in there and avoid getting injured, while Juhi told him to give it their best. Although Jin-Woo could barely afford a knife with little magic power in it for his equipment, he was determined to see through the raid. At the same time, Chairman Go was having problems with the administration because of the dungeon breaks. However, they still want the resources from the dungeons, like the essence stones collected by the hunters from the defeated beasts. Jin-Woo rejoiced after collecting his first essence stone, but a magic beast suddenly attacked. Although he managed to dodge and launch a counterattack, his knife broke when his attack landed on the beast, so he was defenseless against its stab. Another hunter killed the magic beast in one strike. Jin-Woo was lying on the ground, seriously injured, but Juhi started healing him right away, and he watched as his team killed the magic beasts with ease. Chairman Go explained that the essence stones collected from high-ranking magic beasts can be turned into powerful weapons and gear to fight the other beasts. Similar to the mana crystals, although the government uses it as a power source instead, it is not only safer but also more efficient compared to the other sources, making it the ideal clean energy source. Because of this, great duty rests on the hunter's shoulders. At the same time, Jin-Woo's team rejoiced after Mr. Song landed the final blow on the dungeon boss. However, it wasn't the case for Juhi. She was more concerned for Jin-Woo's safety. Seeing his injuries, she was certain that something much worse could happen if he continued as a hunter, but Jin-Woo just apologized, which upsets her. Meanwhile, their teammates were a little disappointed after collecting all the loot, as there weren't many magic crystals inside the dungeon either. Jin-Woo felt the same, as the single E-rank essence stone he collected wasn't worth almost losing his life. However, one of his teammates suddenly called for their attention as he found something that looked like a tunnel. Seeing this, some of them realized that they were inside a double dungeon. Park and Kim got excited, thinking that there was more loot inside. But Mr. Song stated that the proper procedure was to wait for the Hunter Association's orders. However, Park and Kim didn't want someone else to get the loot, and they thought it would be fine as they were inside a D-rank dungeon, so they suggested entering. Mr. Song still considered the risk, so he thought it needed to be decided through votes. The group's sentiments were split, but Jin-Woo hasn't voted yet. He was aware of the great danger, especially for someone like him. However, with his dad missing, his mom undergoing treatments, and his sister studying, he voted to enter the dungeon, desperate for the money. At the same time, a Hunters Guild member was reporting their recruitment's progress to Choi Jong-in, their guildmaster. He was determined to gain more hunters with potential, although he was certain that no one was comparable to Cha Hae-in. Meanwhile, Cha Hae-in effortlessly retrieved a girl's bag from some snatchers. However, the people around her swarmed at her when they recognized that she was the S-rank hunter Cha Hae-in, so she had to escape by jumping on top of the buildings. 40 minutes had passed since Jin-Woo's group entered the second dungeon. Jin-Woo apologized to Joo-hee since they had to enter because of his vote. She was upset. However, it was because she was worried about his safety again, so Jin-Woo apologized. She was glad that Jin-Woo could understand her concern, and she asked him to treat her to show his gratitude. Jin-Woo was surprised, but their attention shifted to their teammates, who confirmed their arrival at the boss chamber. Some of them were intimidated by the huge door, but Kim was already prepared to open the door, and he was just waiting for Mr. Song's signal. Meanwhile, Chairman Go was giving a lecture to the newly awakened. He reminded everyone that it was their choice to be a hunter or not, but he already explained the dangers and mysteries of the dungeons. And lastly, he declared that even after getting accustomed to raids, they needed to be careful and remain afraid in order to survive. After entering the dungeon, Jin-Woo's teammates were amazed to see the torches around them lit up. None of them was familiar with the dungeon, but the old statues immediately caught their attention. Jin-Woo was amazed after seeing the biggest statue. Some of his teammates thought that there was something creepy about it, while others were disappointed instead that there were no magic beasts around. Mr. Song noticed the magic circle embedded in the ground, but someone called him to show him the writings held by one of the statues. The writings were the commandments of the Kartanen Temple, and while Mr. Song was reading them one by one, Joo-hee called out to Jin-Woo, saying that the big statue's eyes moved and it had been watching them. Jin-Woo thought it was just her imagination, but everyone was shocked when the door shut. They wondered if they were trapped, but one of them immediately tried to leave. However, after touching the door, Mr. Song immediately asked him to get away, but it was useless as the nearest statue killed him in one strike. They started to feel fear, including Jin-Woo, who was completely aware of how weaker he was compared to the hunter who just died. He thought the strength of the statues didn't make sense for a D-rank dungeon. He immediately realized that the biggest statue was also capable of moving, and he watched as its eyes stared back at him. Ever since his first raid, Jin-Woo has been close to death plenty of times. He was fighting for his survival even in the lowest ranking dungeons. And compared to other hunters, who equipped themselves better after every raid, he was stuck with a cheap knife and worn out clothes. Day after day, he endured mockery and put up with a life-threatening job. To survive, he always had to keep his eyes open, and he could tell if he was facing death. Jin-Woo screamed at his teammates to get down while protecting Joo-hee. However, not everyone managed to dodge the blast of energy from the statue's eyes. Jin-Woo couldn't understand what was going on, but he was certain that they were all going to die. Jin-Woo's team panicked at seeing their dead comrades, and they wanted to get out of the dungeon as fast as they could. But Mr. Song reminded them that the statue would attack again if they moved. While Jin-Woo was trying to calm Joo-hee down, Mr. Song asked if he figured out that the statue would attack. He thought everyone would be dead if not for Jin-Woo. Jin-Woo replied that it just seemed dangerous, and then he was shocked to see that Mr. Song had lost his arm. He asked Jin-Woo to help stop the bleeding, as he couldn't rely on Joo-hee, who was on the ground still panicking, and it was why she was joining easy raids despite being a B-rank healer. He had also entered a B-rank dungeon previously, so he could tell that the statue was A-rank or even S, and they thought that the god mentioned in the Kartanen Temple's commandments was that statue. When the gates full of magic beasts appeared, the hunters were tasked with defeating these monsters using their special abilities. However, since a hunter's power never changes, there are times when they encounter monsters beyond their power, and it induces absolute despair. Inside a university, Jinna asked Song-hee why she was almost late. She replied that the reason was nothing special, and instead she asked Jinna if her brother was a hunter. Jinna affirmed, but she explained that since he's just an E-rank hunter, he's always getting hurt. Hearing this, Song-hee thought she could even do a better job. At the same time, Mr. Song concluded that the statue was too strong for them to fight, so they had to collect themselves and search for a way to escape. However, one of their teammates, who was confident with his speed, channeled his ability and dashed towards the entrance. However, only his feet were left after getting blasted by the statue. Seeing this, Jin-Woo and Mr. Song realized that the statue could wipe them out easily, so they asked themselves why it wasn't killing them right away. Jin-Woo thought it was unlike any ordinary beast that would attack on sight. Jin-Woo remembered the commandments and asked Mr. Song what the first one was. When Jin-Woo heard that it was to revere God, he realized that the dungeon has its own rules. To confirm this, Jin-Woo stood up and bowed towards the statue to stop it from attacking. He immediately asked his teammates to do the same. Park and Kim questioned him, but Mr. Song realized that he figured out something, so Jin-Woo explained that as long as they kept their heads low and revered the statue like the commandment says, it wouldn't attack. Everyone followed after hearing that Jin-Woo was certain about it, and while Kim was wondering if this would save them, the statue's expression changed into a creepy smile. Park got up, and he rejoiced when the statue didn't attack. The others also got up. They thought they were saved and could finally go home. However, while Jin-Woo thought it wasn't over, the statue also stood up from its throne. Mr. Song panicked and asked if Jin-Woo had a plan. Jin-Woo replied that he had none, but he knew that they had to figure out what the second commandment, which was to praise God, meant. One of them, who knew some exalments for gods, bowed in front of the statue and praised it. However, Jin-Woo realized that his words weren't working, and the guy died under its feet without any resistance. The statue stepped on another hunter who was frozen in place in fear. Mr. Song told everyone to spread out, while Park thought it would be safer near the other statues. However, despite Kim's warning, Park was sliced in half by the statue. While running away with Juhi, Jin-Woo was still trying to figure out what the second commandment meant. He looked around and noticed that some statues were holding instruments instead of weapons. He figured it would be safe in front of these statues, and it was confirmed when the statue in front of Mr. Song started playing its instrument when he got close enough. Kim cried after arriving safely in front of a statue holding another instrument, while Jin-Woo found out that the statue wouldn't play its instrument if there were more than one person nearby. So he ran towards another statue to save Juhi. However, while dodging the huge statue's stomp, Jin-Woo got in range and was attacked by another statue holding a shield. But Jin-Woo refused to die, and he crawled towards a singing statue to barely survive. The biggest statue returned to its throne, so Juhi immediately came to check Jin-Woo's condition, and she realized that he had lost a leg. Juhi treated his wounds, but she started bleeding from overexerting herself. Seeing their fallen comrades, they thought it was like a nightmare. However, Kim started blaming Mr. Song for everything. He pretended that it wasn't his or Park's idea to enter the dungeon, while Mr. Song accepted the responsibility as he made the final decision. At the same time, an altar formed in the middle of the dungeon. Jin-Woo immediately figured out that it would be for offering a sacrifice, as the third commandment was to prove their faith. Hearing this, Kim immediately thought of sacrificing Mr. Song. He pressured Mr. Song by reminding him that he had agreed to take responsibility, and he stopped the others from interfering until Mr. Song agreed. Jin-Woo thought it wasn't Mr. Song's fault, as they all voted to decide. However, Mr. Song was already in the middle of the altar to sacrifice himself. They were confused when a flame suddenly lit up at the altar, but Mr. Song immediately asked Jin-Woo what he needed to do. Jin-Woo asked his two other teammates to bring him near the altar. They were afraid, but he was certain that nothing would happen, so they agreed. 3 more flames lit up the altar, but Jin-Woo hasn't figured out anything yet, and he asked if anyone would rescue them if they just waited. However, Mr. Song thought it was likely that the statues would make their move again before they got rescued. While Jin-Woo realized that once the dungeon's time was up and they failed, there would be a dungeon break and the statue could cross outside the gate. At the same time, Jinna arrived at the hospital where their mom was receiving treatment. She composed herself before entering her mom's room, and she happily told her mom everything that happened in her day. Jin-Woo also asked Kim and Juhi to come over to the altar. He realized it would light up the flames, and only then would something happen. After all the flames had lit up, the entrance to the dungeon opened. The blue flames died one by one while the statues started moving towards them. Jin-Woo realized that they could stop the statues' movements by looking at them. However, the girl supporting Jin-Woo panicked and ran towards the entrance. The door closed a bit, but the girl safely escaped. Jin-Woo noticed that blue flames were dying over time. He thought the open door was a trap to cause panic, and their faith was getting tested. However, seeing the girl escape safely, the guy supporting Jin-Woo tossed him aside to escape. Kim also wanted to leave after seeing this, but Jin-Woo stopped him as they wouldn't have enough people to keep an eye on the statues to stop their movements. Jin-Woo explained that they had to wait until all the blue flames were gone before all of them could safely escape. However, Kim stated that they could end up trapped as well. He acknowledged they would all be dead without Jin-Woo, despite him being the weakest among them, but he was desperate to survive, saying that he still had a family waiting outside, and he apologized before leaving. Despite this, Jin-Woo still refused to give up. Mr. Song thought the door would remain open as long as one of them stayed. He asked Johee to look after Jin-Woo for him, but her legs actually gave out, so Jin-Woo asked Mr. Song to take Johee and leave. Mr. Song wanted to stay, but Jin-Woo wouldn't be able to carry Johee out with one leg left. Johee wanted to sacrifice herself instead, but Jin-Woo refused to listen. He reminded her of his promise to take her out to eat, and he gave her the only essence stone he had, asking her to use it to buy herself dinner. He declared that he would collect the change later after escaping. Johee thought it was nonsense, but Mr. Song had to knock her unconscious as they were running out of time. Seeing them leave, Jin-Woo felt relieved that he was the only one who had to die. He regretted that he didn't have better life insurance, but he picked up a sword, hoping he could take down one of the statues with him. However, he couldn't hide his real thoughts anymore as the statues brutally attacked him. He felt despair that he couldn't get stronger despite all his efforts. He couldn't even scream in anguish as he got impaled at the altar. He felt resentment towards his selfish comrades, who used their family as an excuse to escape, not considering that he also had a family waiting for him to come out of the dungeon alive. While the statue was tossing him towards the center of the altar, he thought he was a stupid hypocrite to think it was good that he was the only one who had to die. And while the statue was about to finish him off, he was in tears while thinking that he didn't want to die. He wished he had another chance. At the same time, the blue flame died out. He saw a notification saying that he had acquired the qualifications to be a player, which he accepted before his heart could stop beating. Jin-Woo saw a notification congratulating him for becoming a player before waking up inside the hospital room. He was surprised to see that he still had the arm that was severed in the dungeon, and he nervously removed his blanket to check if he also had his right foot. He noticed that even his wounds were gone, so he wondered if everything was just a dream. At the same time, Woo Jinchul and Kang Taeshik from the Hunters Association's surveillance team entered his room. Jin-Woo asked why they came to see him, but Woo Jinchul didn't answer as he called a doctor to check Jin-Woo's condition first. Jin-Woo was surprised when he found out that he had been unconscious for 3 days, but he immediately asked about Mr. Song and Juhee's condition. Woo Jinchul explained that since Mr. Song had lost an arm, while Johee was in treatment for severe psychological shock, both of them were likely to retire as hunters. He also explained that only 6 of them were able to survive the double dungeon, so Jin-Woo remembered the horror of seeing his teammates die in front of him. Woo Jinchul also explained that the White Tiger Guild entered the dungeon after being alerted by the survivors. However, they only found the unconscious Jin-Woo and no signs of the Kartanen temple or the statues. Jin-Woo couldn't believe it. Woo Jinchul also thought it was suspicious, but there were no inconsistencies in the survivors' stories, and they also found the remains, so they considered the chance of Jin-Woo having a second awakening instead. Although a hunter's ability is determined after awakening, there are rare occasions where a hunter goes through a second awakening and rises to A or even S rank. Jin-Woo hoped it would be the case for him, and he was excited to have his mana measured again. Woo Jinchul thought the only way the powerful statues would disappear without a trace was if Jin-Woo had a second awakening, gained strength similar to S ranks, and defeated the magic beasts. However, the mana meter only showed a rating of 10. Which is almost low enough that Jin-Woo could be considered a civilian. Because of this, Woo Jinchul couldn't understand how Jin-Woo survived, and they couldn't investigate further as the dungeon had already vanished. Jin-Woo was a little disappointed, but he was more concerned about why they didn't ask about the notification window that was showing in front of him. He realized he was the only one who could see it, but he didn't know how to use it. He remembered seeing something similar when he was about to die, but his thought was interrupted by Jinna's arrival. Jinna scolded him for risking his life again, also threatening him that she would quit studying to work so he wouldn't have to continue as a hunter. Jin-Woo apologized, but he smiled, happy that he survived and met his precious sister again. Afterwards, he confirmed if she could see the notification window, and when she couldn't, he asked how to read unread notifications in games. Jinna thought something was wrong with his head, but she answered that he had to open the message box, and when he repeated her words, the notification window showed the messages, including a quest. Jinna was confused, but she was also happy to see that her brother was fine, and she decided to leave with Songhae. Jin-Woo was confused while reading the messages, and when he saw the exercises in the strength training daily quest, he thought it was a joke, especially after seeing the penalty for failure. He didn't know what was going on, but he decided to just ignore it and rest. At the same time, Woo Jinchul reported to Chairman Go that Jin-Woo didn't have a second awakening. They agreed that it needed further investigation as it was a unique case, but they were glad that the incident didn't result in a dungeon break. Inside the Hunters Guild headquarters, Choi Jong-in asked Cha Hae-in to be an instructor on a raid that would serve as a test for their new recruits. Cha Hae-in was confused, as she has doubts about her ability to mentor, but Choi Jong-in asked her to just fight like usual. He thought the newbies would learn from her example. Choi Jong-in knew that although they are one of the 5 biggest guilds in Korea, they are average at the international level, so he wanted to hone their members' combat skills to improve their overall strength. At the same time, another gate opened in the middle of the road, but the normal citizens were already used to it, and they just wished the hunters would take care of it quickly. Meanwhile, the deadline for Jin-Woo's daily quest had passed. He received a notification for failing to do it. He woke up because of a powerful earthquake, and after falling from his bed, he was already in the middle of the desert when he opened his eyes. However, he didn't have any time to be confused. A giant centipede appeared behind him, and he suddenly received a quest to survive for 4 hours. So Jin-Woo's face was painted with disbelief. The nurse was confused at Jin-Woo's disappearance, and while they were looking for him, Jin-Woo was already running away from the centipedes for almost 2 hours. Despite the increase in the centipede numbers, Jin-Woo managed to survive until the timer had almost run out. But the centipede was also about to devour him. Luckily, the timer was a second faster. Jin-Woo stared at the quest window while panting, and he lost consciousness before he received the quest reward, while the nurses were shocked to see him lying on the floor. After telling Jinna that he was recovering well, Jin-Woo left his room to do the exercises on his daily quest. Meanwhile, Joo-hee rejected an easy raid because of the previous trauma, but she felt better after hearing about Jin-Woo's recovery. She immediately went to visit Jin-Woo. He heard the nurses talking about a person who was running every morning, and she was surprised to see Jin-Woo. However, when she heard that he was trying to quickly get back in shape to continue as a hunter, she decided against meeting him. 4 days had passed since Jin-Woo regained consciousness. He figured out that he would receive 3 rewards for completing his daily quest. The first was full recovery, which could even remove his exhaustion completely. Second was the ability points that he was currently using to increase his strength. And the third was a random loot box. Jin-Woo usually gets useless items from the box, but this time he received a key to an instance dungeon located in Hapjeong subway station. Jin-Woo had no idea what an instance dungeon was, but he could tell that it would help him get stronger, although he couldn't help but feel nervous when he remembered the statues from the dungeon. While planned raids for gates all over Korea were being reported in the news, Jin-Woo visited her sick mother. He still remembers how she suddenly lost consciousness 4 years ago. The doctor explained that her condition was called eternal sleep disease, and it was due to continual exposure to mana that was coming from the gates. And sadly, the best modern medicine could do is provide life support. Jin-Woo also remembered the moment he qualified as a hunter. He thought it changed his life for the better and that he could finally afford his mother's treatment. Despite Jinna's worry, Jin-Woo was confident it would be fine. However, he struggled even against the weakest magic beasts, so he endured being treated like he was useless. Jin-Woo continued putting his ability points to his strength as preparation for the instance dungeon. Jin-Woo believed that he could escape if it got dangerous, so he entered the dungeon without hesitation. However, the exit has been sealed while he realized that he was on a different dimension after seeing a civilian pass by without noticing anything. Jin-Woo thought the instance dungeon was like a red gate. He was troubled that his plan to run if it got dangerous was now useless, and he realized that his only choice was to clear the dungeon and obtain the teleportation stone, like what the notification says. He was nervous, as he couldn't even beat an E-rank beast previously, but now he had to fight the boss alone. Jin-Woo encountered 3 goblins first. He was at a disadvantage for a while, but he managed to create an opening and stab one of the goblins to death. Because of this, he realized he had gotten stronger, and he killed the 2 remaining goblins with no problem. However, a steel-fanged lichen attacked from behind him next. It easily broke Jin-Woo's knife with its bite, so he realized that it was much stronger than the goblins. Jin-Woo's legs shook from fear. He remembered the horror he experienced against the statues, and he wondered if he was afraid. He never thought he was traumatized, but the lichen didn't give him any time to think. It pounced at him while he was distracted. He couldn't dodge properly, so he was wounded by the lichen, and he was frozen in place as the lichen pounced at him again. While dodging against the steel-fanged lichen, Jin-Woo was surprised by how light his body felt, and by how much stronger he got after increasing his strength attributes. However, the magic beast is still stronger, so Jin-Woo didn't know what to do. While running from the lichen, Jin-Woo thought he needed a weapon, so he took out a sword from his inventory and used it to cut the lichen's head in half. He still remembers that Kim bought it for 3 million won. He thought he could never afford it, but he wanted to put it to good use. Jin-Woo's injuries healed after he leveled up. However, he had to deal with 2 more Lycans. Jin-Woo was not afraid anymore. He didn't panic even when the Lycan caught his sword in its mouth, and he gave it a kick before cutting its head. And while the one remaining Lycan ran away in fear, Jin-Woo thought they were nothing compared to the statues. While resting, Jin-Woo noticed that he had gained a level and 5 ability points. He thought fighting was more efficient compared to his daily quests. Although he had other stats like perception and intelligence, he still focused on strength. And after seeing how much stronger he had gotten, he was even more determined to work harder. Jin-Woo checked if the beasts dropped essence stones, but he found out that they dropped items instead, identical to video game logic. He also found out that he had gained access to the store, although it was still limited to selling his items for gold. And he had no idea how much it was worth in money. Afterwards, Jin-Woo planned his next course of action. He thought he couldn't stay for too long because of his lack of food. But he still doubts that he could beat the boss, so he realized that his only option was to keep on leveling up. But he was worried that he could die even before he gets strong enough. At the same time, the remaining Lycan returned with its pack. But Jin-Woo told himself that he didn't have to be afraid as he had already experienced dying. And he started killing the Lycans after charging in the middle of their pack. Jin-Woo started to enjoy the battle. He didn't care about the ridiculous rules as long as he could get stronger. While slaughtering the Lycans, his level continued to rise, and he didn't notice that he also acquired the Wolf Assassin title. Outside the dungeon, the citizens were still troubled by the gates in the middle of the city, and they couldn't wait for the association to do something about it. After killing all the Lycans, Jin-Woo's sword was in really bad condition. He thought it might be a good stopping point, as not only had he acquired the teleportation stone, he also gained a lot of items and the Wolf Assassin title, which increases his abilities by 40% against animal-type monsters. However, he was worried that the dungeon would completely disappear, and that he would never get the chance to get stronger this easily again. He still couldn't understand everything that was happening. He felt like he was dancing atop the Buddha's palm. But he put away the teleportation stone and decided to move forward. Juhi received another call from the Hunters Association, so she apologized for declining to join a raid previously. However, she was informed that a dungeon break happened close to her, and her assistance was also asked. This time, Juhi agreed to help, as she remembered how Jin-Woo refused to give up and tried to continue as a hunter as fast as he could. With each increase in Jin-Woo's level, it became easier for him to defeat the magic beasts. At the same time, he realized that the color of the beast's name describes how strong they are compared to Jin-Woo. When a monster's name is white, it means they are weak. When it is orange, it means their strength is equal to his. But when it is red, it means the monster is stronger than him. And it also changes as Jin-Woo gets stronger, as the Lycan's red name is now white, also proving that he got a lot stronger. However, thanks to his improved perception, he could tell how much weaker he was compared to the boss monster. Jin-Woo was already level 15. He knew that the weaker monster couldn't help him raise his level anymore, and he didn't want to break his sword while fighting them pointlessly. After going down the subway, Jin-Woo thought it was barely recognizable. However, he couldn't observe his surroundings further as he was thrown away from the boss monster's attack, and his sword broke after using it to block. The magic beast was a gigantic snake, and despite Jin-Woo's increase in level, it had an orange name, so he was certain that it was the boss. Jin-Woo was troubled. He thought it was impossible for his broken sword to penetrate the monster's armored scales, and it was also out of the question to fight empty-handed. The snake tried to swallow Jin-Woo, but he managed to dodge, and he tried cutting the monster. But like he expected, his sword was useless against its scales. Because of this, all he could do was dodge its attack. However, it wasn't easy because of the monster's massive size, and Jin-Woo was thrown away after getting hit by its tail. And while the monster was going in and out of the water to attack Jin-Woo, the wave it caused threw the train in Jin-Woo's direction. Jin-Woo managed to dodge, but he realized how weak he still was, and he asked himself how much stronger he needed to be to make up for the time he spent as a laughingstock. Mr. Song mentioned to Jin-Woo how he had been labeled as the weakest hunter of all mankind. He thought it was inappropriate and childish. He asked Jin-Woo to work hard and prove everyone wrong, and Jin-Woo agreed. The snake continued to attack Jin-Woo, and it easily pushed him through the walls with its tail. Jin-Woo was ashamed and tired of being weak. He knew that overwhelming strength was above everything, and the weak could only quiver in fear and stand helplessly around the strong. And after facing death, he realized that as long as he was weak, knowledge, creativity, or kindness wouldn't save him, so he told himself that he would get stronger. Jin-Woo tried to climb up the monster, and despite getting thrown away again, he continued to rise, and his desire for strength just intensified. He told himself that the snake was nothing compared to the statues. He didn't stop trying to pierce the snake's scales with his sword, and when he lost his sword, he held onto the monster's scales, used his strength to crush them, and he refused to let go until the monster died. Jin-Woo gained multiple levels after killing the monster, and although he looked exhausted, he sat on the monster's corpse and laughed, thinking that he got a bit stronger. Jin-Woo was satisfied after seeing the dagger that dropped from the monster, as it not only doubled the attack of Kim's sword but also had paralysis and drain effects. On the other hand, Kasaka's venom glands effect made him nervous, although he still held on to it. Afterwards, the station returned to normal, proving that he really slayed the boss. After leaving the station, Jin-Woo was surprised when he didn't see anyone around. He was wondering what time it was when a soldier suddenly called out to him while talking about a broadcast. Jin-Woo was confused, but the soldier realized that he was a hunter, so he apologized and guided Jin-Woo towards the battlefield. Jin-Woo realized that it was a dungeon break, so the soldier explained that although most of the magic beasts had been taken care of, one big magic beast was left. Because of his improved perception, Jin-Woo could tell where the boss was. The civilians watched the battle between the boss and the hunters. Some were worried that the situation could get worse, while others were just annoyed that it wasn't over yet. The hunters were having trouble against the boss. Not only was their coordination bad, but the boss's powerful defense was also making their attacks useless. The civilians refused to make way for the soldier, so Jin-Woo was stuck behind the crowd, watching. He could tell the team was hastily assembled based on their coordination. He could also tell their ranks, and because none of their D ranks were damage dealers, they couldn't finish off the boss. He was surprised to see Juhi, but he knew she was still shaken up after seeing her fail to cast a healing spell. Jin-Woo didn't blame her, thinking he was the same. However, he started to wind up while telling himself that the D rank monster in front of him was weaker than the one he just fought. And while the hunters were thinking it was over for them, Jin-Woo threw the broken sword at the boss's head, easily shattering its defense. Because of this, the hunters managed to take down the monster. The D-rank tank knew it wasn't their attacks that shattered the boss's defense. He was in disbelief after realizing that it was shattered by the broken sword. He asked the soldier who threw it, but he already concluded that it was a high-ranking hunter. Jin-Woo thought a single attack from him shouldn't be enough, so he concluded that the golem was severely weakened already, while Juhi seemed to recognize him as she watched him leave. The female nurse's attention was all on Jin-Woo, amazed by how much his body had improved. One of the nurses entered his room, but she got distracted by his muscles before she could check his condition and ask him to come to reception. She also gathered the courage to ask for Jin-Woo's contact information, although he thought it was just for sending his test results. Baek Yoon-ho, one of Korea's 7S rank hunters, appeared in the news. The reporter asked Baek what he was up to when he wasn't busy with raids. Baek explained that he would still be busy training to avoid dulling his senses, and he added that it had been his habit even when he was still a firefighter instead of a hunter. Jinna barely noticed that she was almost late for school while watching Baek's interview. She told Jin-Woo that she was leaving for school. She was surprised after seeing Jin-Woo's changes in physique, but she thought it wasn't unusual as he had been working out. Then she left after Jin-Woo forced her to bring an umbrella. Ever since he experienced the penalty, Jin-Woo has never skipped his daily quest, and the ability points he got didn't just improve his stats but also his physique. Jin-Woo still hasn't used the ability points he got after leveling from killing the instance dungeon boss. Like usual, he thought strength was the most important, but he also focused on agility so he could land a hit, while perception was always handy, so he also increased it. However, he ignored his intelligence stat, thinking that it only had something to do with magic. At the same time, Jin-Woo received a call from his landlord. His landlord reminded him about their rent for the month, but he was actually nice enough to offer to put it off a bit later. However, Jin-Woo wanted to pay right away, so the landlord just reminded him to take care before hanging up. Jin-Woo thought rent would not be a problem anymore, as it was now easy for him to kill some goblins. However, it would be difficult for him to join a party and enter better gates. He wondered if he should get reappraised, but he thought he would be attracting trouble if it was revealed that he could grow stronger and stand out too much. And while he was thinking that he should get strong enough first before he revealed his reawakening, he was accepted into a party. A man named Wang Dongsuk accepted Jin-Woo into his raid team. However, his members laughed at Jin-Woo when they recognized him as the weakest hunter of all mankind. Dong-suk apologized for this, but Jin-Woo didn't actually care and admitted that he was E rank before asking if it would be a problem. Dong-suk didn't mind it, as they just needed Jin-Woo to meet the quota. He also explained that Jin-Woo wouldn't receive spoils as he wouldn't be fighting and would carry their baggage and first aid kits instead. But he would still be paid 2 million won. Jin-Woo was bothered that they didn't have a healer, but Dong-suk convinced him that it was fine as they were used to doing raids without them. Jin-Woo thought it was crazy. He also felt that something was off, especially when the contract stated that Dong-suk's team wouldn't be liable for anything that happened inside the dungeon. However, Jin-Woo still signed it. Afterwards, a D-rank hunter named Jin-Ho introduced himself, thinking that he was in the same situation as Jin-Woo. He thought Jin-Woo was nervous, so he declared that he would protect him. However, Jin-Woo was just thinking that he was from an extremely wealthy family because of his fancy gear. While on the way to the gate, Jin-Ho offered to help carry the baggage, and he continued to talk about random stuff until they arrived at the gate. Dong-suk's team and Jin-Ho were worried after seeing the gate's massive size, but Jin-Woo explained that the gate's rank is determined by the amount of leaking magic power, not by size, and any dangerous gate at B rank or above will be handled by large guilds, so the gate in front of them shouldn't be that bad. Jin-Ho stayed in front of Jin-Woo as they entered the gate. He wanted to protect him like he had promised. Dong-suk asked their mage to produce a light for the party, and they were surprised that there weren't any magic beasts. While Jin-Woo remembered the Kartanen temple because of the pitch-black darkness. Jin-Ho asked about the light stones, so Jin-Woo explained that they were used to provide faint lights in dungeons and were often attached to the walls or floor. But Jin-Ho was still confused between light stones, essence stones, and even mana stones. After not finding anything for so long, Jin-Ho asked if there were any dungeons without magic beasts. But Jin-Woo could hear the hiding magic beasts, and he immediately warned the team when he realized they were insect type. The team panicked, not knowing where the beasts would come from. But Jin-Woo immediately found out that they were coming from above them. Their long-range damage dealers attacked immediately to reduce their numbers, and once they were in range, Dong-suk used a taunt skill to force the beasts to attack him. Jin-Woo realized that it was the reason why he was C rank, while their mage used this chance to kill most of the monsters. Jin-Woo was impressed by the party's coordination, while Jin-Ho's fancy gear was making up for his lack of skill. However, he felt that something was off while killing the beasts that reached him. The group got rid of every single one of the beasts without any problem, and while they were excited to collect the essence stones, Dong-suk praised Jin-Woo for predicting where the beasts would be coming from. The mage noticed the monsters that were crushed to death by Jin-Woo. They knew it wasn't their attacks that killed them, but they thought a more powerful magic beast was responsible for it. Jin-Ho asked Jin-Woo if he saw how he had killed the magic beasts, but Jin-Woo realized something, and he asked how expensive his gear was, so Jin-Ho explained that it cost a lot since his father wanted to give something nice for his first raid. Hearing this, Jin-Woo warned him that they needed to be careful. Inside the White Tiger Guild, their members were startled when they felt the building shaking. It was from Baek-Yun-ho punching a hole through a massive stone, but it wasn't even enough as a warm-up for him. Jin-Woo's group continued to travel inside the massive dungeon, and while Jin-Ho was learning about stuff related to dungeons from Jin-Woo, he asked if Jin-Woo was really fine carrying all their baggage. Jin-Woo thought it was a good deal to earn money without having to fight, but he still had his doubts. He thought it was too good of a deal. Dong-suk's party was surprised that they were only meeting half-dead magic beasts. They concluded that the boss must be responsible for this, and they cut through the webs to enter the boss chamber. However, they gasped in excitement after finding a huge amount of mana crystals that they estimated to be worth 1 billion won. Dong-suk's member thought even his brother would be envious of it, while Dong-suk thought that he'd use this haul to grow his strike team and finally stop being beneath his brother. Each of Dong-suk's party members was elated. They were certain that even if they divided it 7 ways, they would still get around 100 million. None of them considered sharing with Jin-Woo. Jin-Ho was not pleased. He asked to see Jin-Woo's contract and tried to negotiate with Dong-suk to include Jin-Woo in the sharing of mana crystals. Dong-suk agreed. He declared that they would share the mana crystals evenly among everyone. However, he reminded Jin-Ho about the boss, as they had to mine all the mana crystals before killing the boss, as the whole dungeon would disappear. He thought the boss was asleep after having his meal, so he suggested that they start mining right away. However, they actually left their mining equipment outside, not expecting that there would be so many mana crystals inside the dungeon. Dong-suk was upset, but he asked Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho to watch over the crystals and the boss while they fetched their equipment outside. Jin-Ho panicked, but Dong-suk declared that the boss had a full stomach and wouldn't wake up unless it was disturbed. Jin-Ho tried to argue, but Dong-suk convinced Jin-Ho to trust him, as he had plenty of experience with raids. Jin-Woo finally realized what was going on. He remembered Mr. Song's warning about hunters who would use their weaker teammates as bait for enemies and disguise them as accidents, as no one else could really know what happened. However, Dong-suk's group had already sealed the entrance to the boss chamber. Jin-Ho blamed himself. He thought they were betrayed because he tried to negotiate about the mana crystals. Jin-Woo thought it wasn't the reason, as he noticed that Dong-suk's members had been prepared to kill them, waiting for them to make a wrong move. However, Jin-Woo was more concerned about the boss. At first, he thought the C-rank boss was on a completely different level compared to an E-rank hunter like him. But he realized it wasn't the case, and he declared that he would beat the boss alone. After exiting the gate, one of Dong-suk's subordinates asked if they really had to be so careful instead of just killing Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho. Dong-suk was annoyed with his subordinates being dense. He reminded them that their goal was the magic crystals, so it was best not to fight the boss inside its chamber and instead let it feast on Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho, then mine the crystals once it goes back to sleep. Cho-kyun asked if he should light up the place, but Dong-suk didn't think it was a good idea, and he planned to just use the spider tunnels to sneak back in again. And if it didn't work out, he planned to take down the boss themselves, grab some mana crystals, and retrieve Jin-Ho's fancy gear as compensation. He also started looking up Jin-Ho's background so he could show up at his funeral to avoid suspicions. He was certain that both Jin-Woo and Jin-Ho had no chance of surviving, as both he and Kyun were certain that none of them could take the boss down alone. Jin-Ho stopped Jin-Woo from fighting the boss. He was certain that an E-rank like Jin-Woo had no chance at all, as it would need a B-rank hunter to take down a C-rank boss alone. He suggested that they look for a way to escape instead. Jin-Woo thought Jin-Ho was right. He knew that the boss in front of him was significantly stronger compared to the golem and the blue venom fang Kasaka, but he wanted to face it. He thought it was worth a shot as he was level 18 now. Jin-Woo charged at the boss, and he declared that the real hunt begins. At the same time, Chairman Go had just finished attending another meeting on energy development. It was starting to wear him down. He thought these tasks didn't really suit him. Woo Jinchul explained that after the last meeting, Chairman Go's schedule was clear, so he asked for some guidance, also hoping it was the change of pace that Chairman Go needed. Chairman Go happily agreed. Jin-Woo skillfully dodged the spider's attacks while continuously slashing at its limbs. However, he couldn't cause any damage as its exoskeleton was too hard, while one wrong move could be his death because of the spider's overwhelming strength. Meanwhile, Jin-Ho couldn't believe what he was seeing. He concluded that Jin-Woo was one of the false rankers who had the ability to control their magic power to get a lower ranking. He was afraid for his life, as he had heard that most false rankers were lunatics thirsty for blood. The spider's tough exterior was still causing Jin-Woo trouble. He had failed to cause any damage while his fatigue continued to accumulate, and he would slow down once it reached a certain value. Jin-Woo knew that his dagger's drain and paralysis would be the keys to victory, and he charged towards the boss, planning to attack the weak spot around its eyes. However, he had to jump back as the spider spit out acids that could melt even rocks. Jin-Woo realized that the spider was much stronger than he thought, and he was certain that he couldn't let the battle drag on. He used his dash skill to buff his speed and get closer to the spider, and although his dagger couldn't pierce the spider's exoskeleton, its debuffs were applied. Jin-Woo continued to strike the spider, and he even tried to increase his speed further. However, he suddenly slowed down when his fatigue reached 70, and he was thrown away after receiving the spider's attack. The spider immediately attacked again to finish him off. Jin-Woo was still planted on the ground because of his fatigue. However, he managed to use his full recovery in time, then jumped at the spider's head to stab its eyes non-stop and continuously apply the drain and paralysis effects of his dagger. Jin-Woo didn't stop until the spider died. He gained multiple levels after killing it, but he thought he would be in trouble if he didn't save the full recovery from his daily quest rewards. Jin-Ho couldn't believe what he just saw. He was even more convinced that Jin-Woo was a false ranker, so he immediately approached Jin-Woo, who was wondering how much he could sell the essence stone that he got. Jin-Woo was confused, as Jin-Ho even called him boss while offering him some drinking water. At the same time, Dong-suk's group appeared from one of the spider tunnels, and they were surprised that the two were still alive. Meanwhile, Chairman Go and Woo Jinchul were sparring inside a training room. Woo Jinchul was impressed by how powerful the chairman still is, while Chairman Go praised his improvements, and they agreed that it was also important that a hunter work on his body and mind, instead of solely relying on powers, as one could often find themselves in extreme situations inside the dungeon. Dong-seok's group was surprised to see the dead boss. They thought it was actually weak, unlike what they first thought, so Jinho's fancy gear was enough to kill it. Dong-seok asked Jinho if he was Yu Myung-hun, the head of Yujin Construction's son. He offered to give Jinho a chance, and he asked him to kill Jin-Woo. He added that the only way he was walking out of the dungeon alive was if he became their accomplice. Dong-seok wanted to be careful. He thought it would be troublesome if Jinho's sword had some special effects that were enough to kill the C-rank boss. However, Dong-seok declared that Jinho would die together with Jin-Woo if he refused to cooperate. Jinho walked in front of Jin-Woo, but he pulled out his sword and prepared himself to fight Dong-seok's group. Jin-Woo was surprised by Jinho's decision. Same with Dong-seok, but he immediately gave the order to kill Jin-Woo first, and all of them showed their killing intent as they walked closer to the two. Jin-Woo was prepared to take action. However, he was distracted when he received a quest to kill all 6 of them, so he was hit by Kyuwon's attack. Meanwhile, Heejin met up with Gina and Lee Bora at the shopping district. After entering a cafe, they started talking about how it was going for them in their respective guilds. Heejin explained that it was just the usual for her, while Gina and Lee Bora explained how Cha-Hee took down an A-rank beast that was giving the whole team some difficulty without breaking a sweat during their training. They thought they were really lucky to be part of the White Tiger Guild and the Hunters Guild, which are both in the big leagues and not one of those strike teams that have a suspiciously high fatality rate. While lying on the ground injured, Jin-Woo remembered that survival of the fittest is the reality, and that the world is filled with violence, deception, and betrayal. He started to grow numb of it. However, he wondered if the system needed to keep him alive for some reason, as it was requiring him to kill the 6 people that were threatening his life. But he decided to use the system to get stronger. Dong-seok was surprised after seeing Jin-Woo get up, but they just laughed, thinking that Kyuwon had held back. Jin-Woo remembered that the weak always get taken from. Afterwards, he asked the group if they were prepared to be preyed on themselves since they were hunters. Dong-seok and his group stared in silence, but Juntae stepped up and asked Dong-seok to let him handle Jin-Woo. Juntae mocked Jin-Woo, thinking that the weakest hunter of all mankind had no chance against him. However, Jin-Woo took out his dagger and casually beheaded Juntae. Dong-seok couldn't understand how an E-rank managed to kill a D-rank like Juntae, while Jin-Woo didn't know what to feel after killing someone. However, he had no plan to back down, knowing that the only way he could survive was to kill all 6 of them. Dong-seok's party finally took the situation seriously, but Jin-Woo killed them one by one until Dong-seok was the only one alive. Jinho realized that Jin-Woo was even stronger compared to when he was fighting the boss, while Dong-seok thought that Jin-Woo had been hiding his real strength after seeing his party die in mere seconds. However, he declared that he was nothing like his party, and he used his reinforcement skill to make his body as tough as steel. He was also certain that Jin-Woo was just relying on his speed and his dagger's special effects, so he attacked Jin-Woo with confidence that he could win. However, Jin-Woo just grabbed his face and slammed his head on the ground. Dong-seok couldn't understand what had happened, but he concluded that Jin-Woo wasn't an E-rank, and he asked for Jin-Woo's mercy while offering to let him have all the magic crystals. Jin-Woo reminded Dong-seok that he had tried to kill him 3 times, but Dong-seok declared that he wouldn't get away after killing him, as he started to threaten Jin-Woo with his little brother. However, Jin-Woo reminded him that nothing that happens inside the dungeon ever goes out, and he beheaded Dong-seok before he could even finish his words. Afterwards, Jin-Woo received a notification that he had finished his quest, while Jinho started throwing up, seeing all the dead bodies in front of him. The Hunters Association employee was confused that all of the C-ranks had died while an E-rank Jin-Woo and a D-rank Jinho survived the raid. However, she recognized all of Jinho's fancy gear, and she concluded that it was the reason behind their survival. At the same time, Jin-Woo noticed the rewards he got from the quest, but what interested him was the murder intent skill that could cut all of its target's abilities in half. After finishing up the debriefing, Jinho was still calling Jin-Woo his boss, but Jin-Woo didn't seem to care, and instead he was glad that he gave Jinna an umbrella as it started raining. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoy this video, and please subscribe so you won't miss the next part. And just comment down any anime you want to see in this channel.